Very, very good evening. It's Monday night and it is the 18th. Wow, time flies when you're in lockdown. Yes, we are still in lockdown. And this, of course, is Conversations from Lockdown. Myself, Aidan, brought to you by Kyalami Park Equestrian. Wow, our guest this evening, somewhat of an overachiever, really. She's probably smiling in the background as I say that. She's, I don't think, out of her 30s and already has ridden at the World Equestrian Games. She's ridden at Hickstead and was placed pretty highly there. And of course, she is a two-time winner of the South African Derby and was the youngest winner of the Derby as well. She comes with quite a CV, does young Jade Walsh. Jade, how are you?
Good, thanks, Aidan. How are you?
Did I get it all right? You're not yet out of your 30s, are you?
Nope, still a spring chicken until September.
Right, well, still far away. Enjoy the 20s. So I wasn't kidding when I said somewhat of an overachiever. You do have one hell of a resume when it comes to equestrian sport. And most of your big accomplishments on that wonderful horse in New Era, but we'll get to all of that. First of all, how are you in lockdown?
It's been a really strange time, obviously, for everybody. But I've really enjoyed it, and I've been working really hard on my new business, which is called Just Lose It, and it's an online platform helping people lose weight.
I was going to ask, when you say just lose it, what are you referring to? Hopefully not the husband, because that's still new.
No, just lose the fat.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so the lockdown has really helped me just focus and work, and I'm always off cycling and off riding the horses and off on holiday somewhere. My husband loves to travel, so it has been great for me. Our best friends came up from PE to do lockdown with us. So we've had that like social interaction and friends, which I think has definitely helped our minds. You know, the odd party every now and then.
Yeah. What do you mean they've come to do lockdown with you in the same house? You're all bunking up?
Yeah, so we have a Airbnb, which obviously isn't being rented at the moment. So just before, like 2 days before the lockdown, they're actually from PE. So my husband phoned them and said, listen, come. So they came and they're staying there, but it's on the same property.
Okay.
So yeah, we basically in lockdown together. Which has been awesome.
And obviously no riding, and for you are a bit of a fitness freak, like you say. You've just started this business, Just Lose It. But I believe that apart from the riding, you're also into. I know you're into triathlons, and I know that you cycle and you run, and you're very, very active. So I would have thought that lockdown for somebody like you who needs to get out and exert some energy would have been a little bit tough. Have you got a stationary bike and a home gym, or how are you coping with that?
So yeah, it's hectic because although like we all fitness fanatics and whatever, we enjoy being out with friends and people. So initially I thought, well, I'll just like train all day. It'll be so fun. You know, at home we'll just have more time to train. But the level of motivation just to get through a session a day has been very difficult. But we've got an indoor trainer. So you put your bike on this like indoor thing. And then you join up with a program called Zwift, which is absolutely amazing. So I can go for a cycle with my friend who lives in Australia.
Oh. What are you looking at when you're Zwifting?
It's like a whole sort of fake road. It's quite difficult to explain if you've never
Zwifted.
Yes, if you've never Zwifted. But it's basically you can go do a London cycle or a cycle in New York, which looks very similar to the actual road. And they've developed a lot of racing and group rides and stuff there. So although you're stationary in your garage, you are actually cycling with friends and racing with friends. So that's definitely kept us going.
Okay. Now let's talk about your career with horses. Take us right back to the beginning. Like you said, you're a PE girl, born and bred, raised there. Where exactly in PE and the whole story? Who taught you? How did you get involved in the horses? Were your parents horsey, or you first generation? We want to know from your lips.
Right from the beginning, sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll leave out a lot of pieces, but I'll give it a go. So we lived in St. Francis Bay, and my parents took us riding at the local riding school between St. Francis and Jeffreys with a guy called Ben Stunder. And then eventually, I think, I went to Woodridge, and we used to ride at the riding school there. And then they started taking us into PE. And Diane Snodgrass owned a place called Rothman's Place Riding School. So we took up some riding lessons with the local riding school, and then eventually started buying a pony, leasing a pony, and then buying a pony. I think my mom used to ride back in the day, and then when I started getting into it, and my sister Kendall, then she started up again. Mm-hmm. And then I think when I was about 11, 12, I got my first pony. We went to go watch the SA Champs in Cape Town, and this one pony won the SA Champs. So then this pony was for sale. And of course, when you're 12, your parents want you to have the pony who won SA Champs. Yeah. So my mom was like, okay, we'll go try the pony.
I don't know what parents you had. I wish my parents had gone, I want my son to have the pony that won SA Champs.
No, my mom was in.
Good start.
So we were going to try this. I can't even remember what the pony's name was. We're going to fly to Durban that day to try the pony, and it got sold. Oh. So I was busy riding this pony in the riding school. So my mom's like, okay, cool, we'll just buy you this one. Which
it wasn't going to win SA Champs, was it?
Definitely not. But it taught me a lot. It ran away with me quite often, and it's stopped quite a few times, but it did teach me a lot. And then, then I think it was a year later, Diane went to SA Champs, and she said that this other pony called Rose Holly was for sale. So my mom said, okay, well, if you think that's the pony for Jade, buy it. So Diane bought it, and it came back to PE, and then that was my first sort of top pony. And
but now you must have been towards the end of your children's career when you got this pony, because you said you were already 11, 12 when you got your first, and then there was the other one, and then this one. So
I think I got the first one, the riding school one, when I was about 11, and then I probably got this one called Rose Holly when I was about 12.
Okay, so you had a good 2 years to go or so.
Yeah, and then I could be out by a year or so.
That's all right. We'll forgive you.
And then I competed Rose Holly, and we started going to a few Joburg shows. And then it was quite amazing. We went to a show with Trevor at Trevor Lovegren's yard. That whole they used to have that something international.
Redwood Park Easter Festival, Easter Classic, or
something up there. And a guy called Craig Williamson came up to my dad, I think, or my mom. I can't remember the story 100%. And he was like, listen, I've got this unbelievable pony. It's won SA Champs. It's all of this stuff. Why don't you buy it for your daughter, or, maybe she can ride it for a while, take it to SA Champs in Katu. I think this was in 2013. And then, see how it goes. So I literally got this pony called Fasvat Gusty, who was one of the best ponies in the country. And I got it a month before the SA Champs in Katu. So he came down to PE, and I tried to get to know him or whatever. And then we went up to SA Champs, and I think I came second.
Wow.
And then my parents were like, well, they're not sure if they're going to buy him. I think he was a little bit older, and he was super.
And when you say you went to SA Champs, children's SA Champs, CA, top level children's stuff.
Yeah. Okay. I think it was my first time ever jumping in CA. Because my other pony, Rose Holly, she could do about back then it was CB and CA or whatever. So let's say, I think CB back then was 1 meter. So she could only do that height, and Fasvat Gusty could obviously do any height.
Yeah.
So anyway, then after SA Champs, my mom said, listen, we're not going to buy the pony. It's a little bit too expensive and all these things. So the pony went to my friend in Pretoria, Rochelle, and they were going to maybe buy it, and I don't know. Anyway, on my birthday in the September, because I think Children's Champs used to be in July when I was a child. So in September, it was my birthday, the 18th of September, and my mum fetched me from school, and we walked into the yard, and I was like, oh, there's this new pony. Whose new pony? So they were like, oh, no, they're not sure. This one's from the field. So I'm like, what? Yeah, it comes from the farm. So I'm like, well, what farm and whose pony is it? Because it really looks like Fasvat Gasti. So my mom was like, no, man, what would Fasvat Gasti be doing here? So I was like, well, he's got this like hole in his neck. So I was like, well, he's got the hole. So it's definitely him. So my mom was like, yeah, I bought him for you.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that was the best thing ever. And obviously having such an amazing pony to do your last year in children's. So I think that definitely helped sort of put me on the map. And I think at that age, it's super important what type of ponies you're sitting on. Because you, especially as a girl, to be sitting on naughty ponies that you're falling off and stopping, whatever, isn't the greatest.
But Gusty just went.
Yeah, he was clever. If you missed too often, he'd let you know that you can't do that. He'd stop, and then he'd be like, okay, you can try again. Just make sure you don't do that anytime soon. So he did teach you, but he was very kind and helpful, and he knew his job.
Yeah. And that final year, did you clean up? Did you go to the SA Champs the next year and have lots of success?
I can't remember. I remember I won I think it was the Children's Easter Festival Grand Prix.
Yeah, he got you going, and he gave you a lot of confidence before you moved up to juniors. And was Diane training you?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, Diane was training me. Diane trained me most of my career.
So you go up to juniors. Do you take your pony with you, or was it time for a change onto horses?
No. So my mom always believed, and I think back then it was also quite a bit different. Like you finish children's, leave the ponies behind, and you move on and you start with the horses. So Diane found us a horse called Star of Canada, which was owned by Sue van der Merwe. And she said, listen, I think Jade should have this horse. It'll be a great first junior horse. We need her like on something brave and solid. So
Thoroughbred?
Sorry?
Thoroughbred?
Yes.
Okay.
So I got Star of Canada, and I can't really remember much of those early days of my junior career. I know that my sister also rode, and she'd get a lot of horses and then not really get on with them, and then I'd take those horses. So I think for the first while in my junior career, I didn't have anything like spectacular. I rode quite a lot of like young sort of horses that weren't really great, except Star of Canada. She was good, but again, she could often have a pole down, and she was quite a wild mare.
And when you say good, how good are we talking? She jumped you up through the grades to JAs?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't win SA Champs or be placed in SA Champs or anything like that with her. I won a few of the classes, but I don't think I did anything major.
She was your horse to your schoolmaster, as most juniors need to get them going and up the levels.
Definitely. Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think a new era came onto the scene about 2006, so I must have been about 16. We were actually going on a family holiday to Mauritius, and we came on the way. We had to stop in Joburg for a day or whatever, and we went and watched that Tri-Nation series that they used to do at Kyalami.
Yeah.
And then, a few people who like wanted to sell a horse or wanted their horse to be in the pool could add their horses to the pool, and then those horses were used for all the riders.
Okay.
So a new era was in the pool.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I remember we were sitting on the bank.
So he would have already been a 130 going horse.
He was a 120 horse, and I think this was like his first time that ever put him in this height. Okay. So they said he was Tossie Rayner.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we're sitting on the bank, and I think it was Natalie Hogg came up to my dad and said, listen, they're selling that horse a New Era. So my dad was like, no, man, we're not looking to buy a horse. So she's like, well, you should just look to buy that one. So I said to them, I can't remember the whole story. My parents would know better than me. I said to my mom, come, let's just sit on the horse, you know. So after the class, we tried him out in the warm-up arena. And I remember I started cantering, and I was like, I mean, you're riding these little tiny thoroughbreds with these little canters and whatever, and then you get onto Era, and it's like this big warm blood. And then I jumped over a cross, and I couldn't believe the power. I was like, it literally, I can't explain what I felt. I can still feel it to this day. So I said to my mom, listen, I'm in, let's buy him. So she's like, no. We're going to Mauritius. We're going to think about it. When we come back, we'll try him again. So I said, no, well, someone could buy him when we're in Mauritius. So she was like, well, my mom was very much what's meant to be will be. So I was like, well, this is great, because we're going to go to Mauritius. Someone's going to buy the horse, and that's it over. And the whole holiday, I sat in Mauritius thinking, well, I wonder, like, has someone bought him, or are we still in with a chance? So anyway, we got back, and I went and tried him again. And then my mom was like, okay, no, let's fly Diane up to Joburg and let her look. So Diane flew up, she looked, she loved the horse. I think I must have tried him in the end about 4 times. He even stopped with me a few times, because we had to jump this one jump on the side of the arena, and there was like a blue drum in the bush, and he came around and he would not go near the blue drum. I mean, he was like that his whole life, actually.
Yeah.
So, but that didn't put me off. And then my mom said, okay, no, we're going to ask Barry Taylor, get him to come and give his opinion. So we went to Dominique's.
Sounds like your mom was looking for anybody who would say no.
Yeah.
Listen, I don't think it's, well, we'll try Diane. Diane said yes. Let's get Barry. Let's try.
Yeah, let's try Barry. Yeah. So then we got Barry, and we went to Dominique's yard, and Barry put up like this hectic line, because he said like the horse is a little bit slow in front, and I don't remember his exact words, so sorry Barry if I've got the words wrong. And he put up this line, and it was like a long 4 strides to a short double of verticals, like to see if he could get his front legs out the way in time. And of course Era made it and cleared it. But Barry also said, like, you know, he's a warm blood, he's a Namibian warm blood, he's very quirky, your daughter's 16 years old, it is a risk, you know, she's got to ride this horse every day, she can't just be out at jawling and not coming riding and think it's going to work. So my mom was like, okay, fine, let's vet the horse. So she's like, okay.
Were you a jawler? I mean, did he have, was that sage advice?
Yeah, I think I was a bit of a jawler.
Okay. So then suddenly your mum went, maybe if I buy this horse, I can rein my daughter in. Yeah. Half fault. Maybe it's worth it. Yeah.
But I mean, I was a jawler, but my horses always came first. I mean, maybe Diane would disagree. I would sometimes be late for a horse show every now and then. But I've always been sporty, and sport has always come first. And I might have been hungover a few times, but I was never like, you know, I didn't ever arrive drunk.
It never showed. You hit it well.
Yes. So then we vetted the horse with Roy and Sue at Witpoor's veterinary clinic. And my mom was like, listen, find something wrong. So they x-rayed him from head to toe, and they were like, there's nothing wrong. Like, we can't find anything wrong on the x-rays. And for them to say that, I only realized.
Yeah, I was about to say, for Sue and Roy, for Roy and Sue not to find something wrong, when your mother says fine, so that must have been the soundest horse on the planet.
In the world, yeah. So eventually my mom was like, listen, it's just, I think the horse was 300,000 Rand, and that was in 2006, which was the most they had ever spent on a horse, ever.
Yeah.
So my mom was like, listen, it is a bit ridiculous. The price is too hectic, all of this. So I'll never forget it. I was sitting in the car, and then I started crying, and I was like, you're going to be so sorry one day when someone beats me on a New Era. And I cried and cried and cried, and then eventually she just fought him.
And were they real tears or were they actors' tears? Did you know how to work the parents?
Well, there was just some connection I had with this horse. Like the minute I sat on a New Era, I just like stroked him and just felt the walk and the trot and the canter. And I was like, I can't live without this horse. I would do anything for this horse. So, I mean, I've never felt that such a strong feeling on a horse ever. So even though I was 16, I mean, I probably didn't even know what I was feeling or doing, but yeah.
So they relented and you got him.
I got him.
And the rest, as they say, is history. How old was he at the time? And tell us about his pedigree. He's Namibian, but he's not that typical Namibian stamp of Namibian horse.
No, so he would have been about 8 years old when I got him. And then I mean, you know me with breeding, I actually wanted to print out all the breeding pages before this interview. Because I'll never remember, but he had Drosselklang in him, which is known to be very old-fashioned. And that's probably where he got his little bit like of an odd front technique. So
when you say has an odd front technique, what do you mean?
He got better in his later years, but if you look at photos from when I got him when he was 8 years old, he was very slow in front.
Okay.
His front feet didn't tuck in tight. They were like a bit tangy. Okay. But that's definitely got better as he got older.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he was 8 when you got him. He's not a huge horse. I mean, he's not a small horse. He's a good size, but he's not huge.
No, I think he's 16 too.
Yeah.
And I'm quite tall. But yeah, he was like for a girl, it's a nice size.
It was a good size for you. It was a perfect fit. So tell me where you started with him. So you got him in Joburg, you paid the price. Your parents didn't manage to haggle him down. They paid the full the 300. And straight away
I don't think my mom did, which was the first, because my mom loves a little negotiation.
So straight back to PE to Diane, and Diane obviously approved of the horse.
Yeah.
And tell us about your journey. Where did you start with him? Did you downgrade, start at the bottom, or keep him in the 120s, 130s?
So we got him, and I started in the 110s, and we literally took it very slow. Did a few 110 shows, did a few 120 shows. And then I think our first sort of biggest show, it was SA Champs in Shongweni. Can't remember what year it was, but Amber Rathbone won. And I came second. That was sort of the first, we were probably about 18 then, so it was probably about 2008.
Yeah, I think it was.
So in the space of 2 years, we would have gone from 1.10 to 1.30 meters.
Okay.
And I must say, he was a little disappointing in the beginning. He would always just have one pole. And I was like, what is wrong with this horse? He just has one pole all the time.
In front all the time? Was that the front technique?
Always in the front. And then, then we won that in 2008, I think. And then in 2009, Lorette phoned my mom and said, listen, there's this series called the Stel van der Kraan series, which I think then went to the Hilma Meyer series and now the Neil Farron.
I'm just going to go back. You won SA Champs in 2008.
No, sorry, I was second.
You were second, okay.
Yeah, and that's the year Amber Rathbone won on Poland's Witch Hazel.
Yes, got it.
And then in 2009, Lorette phoned my mom and said that there was the Stel van der Kraan series in Joburg and why don't I come up for it? So it was a series, I think it was 3 legs. Which we ended up winning. So that was our, then like started getting a little bit better in the bigger classes. I think that was also 1.30 meters. And then I went overseas in 2010, I think, to the January.
Is that as being the winner of the Stel van der Kraan, that was the payoff, that was the reward, an overseas trip?
Yeah. So I went and spent a month in Belgium with Lieven van der Kraan. And then while I was there, obviously it's their aim to get you to buy a horse. So while I was there, my mom was like, listen, I'm just letting you know that you're not going to get an import. You know, we're not on that level. So you've got era. Just go there with that in mind. And when I was there after about a week, this horse called Twister arrived at the stable yard. And he was like mental, but we had this connection, of course. So every night I'd phone my mom and be like, I'm so lonely. I really need you to come visit. Please, can you come visit? I can't be on my own anymore. I had to be there for a month. It was so cold.
Oh, the manipulation.
Because
You weren't really lonely, were you? There were lots of Belgian boys there. It was, Mom, come and see this horse. But if you had said, Mom, come and see this horse, you would have got a definite no. How close am I? Yeah.
So I knew once she had seen Twister in the flesh, she would fall in love. So anyway, Mom came, and at this stage, I think the Stelfende series went quite high. I mean, maybe the last day was 1.35 m or, you know, whatever it was. And then I went to Lieven, and he said, okay, you're going to go to a show on Twister. I'm going to put you in the 140s. So I was like, sure, the 140s. That's quite hectic. And I remember one of the other South African girls was there as well, and she still said to Lieven, I mean, Jade's never jumped 140. Are you going to put her on this horse that she doesn't know to jump the 140s? So he was like, yeah, she'll be cool. So I jumped the 140s on Twister, and obviously I loved him to bits. And then the negotiation started, and long story short, I eventually persuaded my mom to buy Twister. So then
Was she there at that 140s?
Yeah.
Was she there to see it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that would have helped.
I didn't win or anything, but I think I jumped a clear, and that was, I mean, you know, in an indoor arena on a horse you didn't know, it was quite an achievement.
Yeah, and your first time, and your mom's there, and yeah, it's a big moment.
Yeah. So then it was really awesome because I had Twister and Era, which now Era was really becoming quite a good horse and always sort of in with a chance. And Twister was always very competitive, always in the placings. He could also have a rail down every now and then, but he was always somewhere in the placings. So that was 2010. I don't think, oh no, wait, we've missed the 2009 one. So yeah, that was 2009. And then...
And you're still in juniors?
I'm in adults now.
You're in adults, okay.
Yeah.
So after the Leven van der Kraan series, you moved up into adults.
Yeah, that was sort of young riders going into adults now.
Okay.
So then 2009, I had Era and Twister, I think. And then that was the Derby year. So it was August. I had never jumped I jumped the junior derbies, that's all. And I think the first year I knocked the last pole, and the second year I knocked the first pole. So my junior derby career wasn't. So then it was the big derby, 2009.
So, but before we get to the derby, 2009, you come back, how much time? Because you've only jumped now your 1.40 m, first 1.40 m on Twister overseas. You come back and then you move the both of them up into 140s, or Era goes up into 140s and then goes into the 150s. So there wasn't much experience in those bigger grades before you got to the derby.
No. So I think the Stelfende Kraan series must have been 2008. Then the Jan of 2009, I was with Lieven and we bought Twister and I jumped at 140. And then I'd never done like the mini derby or the micro derby or anything. But we started training, and my trainer in Joburg, because obviously now I'm between Joburg and PE. So Diane coached me in PE, Jono coached me in Joburg. And it was about 2 months before I said to him, like, we're going to do the derby. So he said, yeah. So I said, the big one. So he was like, sure, well, I don't know about the big one. So I was like, oh, no, not. So he's like, well, let's do the training and see. So we took him to Bryce Era. We took him to Domini, and he just went down the bank, over the dike, up everything. He was a complete natural. And it's also Derby's very suited to my style of riding, because I like to go quite forward and see a distance from a long way away. So it suited him and it suited me quite well. I think Twister must have done the 135 derby that year.
Okay.
Twister was a little bit, he would like go down half down the bank and then turn around and run back up. So that put me off a little bit. So I didn't put him in a bigger one.
Yeah.
And I just had a much longer bond with Era, stronger relationship. So yeah, the August before there was a World Cup in Pretoria.
Yeah.
And I put Era, that was my first sort of bigger class. I put him in the 145 Grand Prix there. And I think I had 1 or 2 poles, I'm not sure. And then I said to John, okay, I'm in, I'm doing the big one. So he was like, okay, cool. And I'll never forget walking the course. And I was like, geez, these jumps are a little bit big. But I think when you're young, that was the great thing about being young. You just...
Yes, Jade, because you are so old now.
No, but I mean when you're like 19...
Back in the day, when I was young, the olden days.
Yeah, back in the day when I was young.
Yeah.
You just sort of went with it. Like you didn't overthink anything. You're like, well, the big derby, what's so big about the big derby, you know? I remember I was walking along the grandstands and then I bumped into Michael Benjamin. And he said to me, I see you've qualified for the big derby. Are you going to do it? So I was like, what do you mean? Of course I'm going to do it. Like, I've qualified. Of course I'm in. I'm going to do it. So he was like, sure, well, good luck, hey? And I'm sure he was thinking, this chick is stuffed. I mean, how she's going to make it over number 1, I don't think he had an idea.
Yeah. Well,
But,
let's just recap, because the January of that year, you jump your first ever 140. Come the October of that year, you're now in the big derby without doing a mini derby, a micro derby, or anything. It's from, as the saying goes, from zero to hero, basically.
Yeah.
There was no huge amount of mileage and gaining rounds and huge amount of experience at that level. What was your first 150?
I think the derby was my first 150 because in the August before, I jumped that 1.45 meter class.
Yes.
And then the derby show was the first time I jumped in the big classes. I mean, looking back...
Well, I mean, you can kind of forgive Michael Benjamin for going, oh, really?
Yeah.
You're telling me the Derby show, the year that you won the Derby was your first 150 show?
Yeah. I know, looking back, I think I must have been crazy.
And where did you qualify?
Sure. I think I jumped 13th. I think.
Yeah. So you were midfield.
Yeah. I think I knocked two down the first day and maybe 1 the next day and then possibly jumped a clear or had another one. I'm not sure. I didn't do anything amazing. But I mean, for me, just to make it to the finish each day, it was like, yay.
Yeah, it was your first 150 show. I'm battling to get my head around it.
I understand.
So you qualify at midfield. You decide to go into the derby. What does Jono say to you?
You know Jono. He's so relaxed.
Yeah.
We just arrived there. We walked the course. He's like, okay, you just canter from jump to jump. Keep him in the middle. Don't forget this. Eyes up there. Look down there. And Jono is amazing because he keeps it very simple.
Mm.
He's not a stressed out type of coach. So when you're with him, you're quite relaxed. He doesn't make, even if there is a big deal about something, he doesn't make it a big deal.
Mm.
So yeah, we had a great relationship. I think just, having Diane coaching me in PE and Jono up here, and it was just the right horse.
Diane must have come up for the event though, didn't she? Was she there?
I think she did come up for it, yeah. So I think Jono and Diane would have probably walked the course with me.
Can you remember walking the course? Can you remember, were you nervous?
I remember walking up to number 2 and it was like, just like way up there. And I was like, don't stress, it's cool. And Diane always says she walked the course and she looked at number 2 and she was like, I think that year number 2 was massive.
Mm. It's the big oxer against the fence on the way down to the Liverpool.
No, number 2.
Yeah, isn't number 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, not 5, 2.
No.
But then
Yeah.
5 was also big as normal.
Yeah.
Was
there anything you were worried about?
I don't think so. I think I just walked the course and I was just so like relaxed. It was almost like, and that was the beauty about being so young.
Yeah.
Because you didn't overthink it. It wasn't like the derby. It was just another class for me that day, which I think is what helped.
And I suppose there were no expectations because you were so new to that level, just being there. Nobody expected anything. If you jump number 1 and jump number 2 and that was it, that would, well, she's, how old were you? 18? 19.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think I would have just turned 19 that month because my birthday's in September. So
now take us through the round. Was it I can't quite remember, was it a clear round, faultless?
Yeah, so there were 3 of us in the jump off. It was me, Sean Henderson, and Paige Schiller. And then I was first to go in the jump off. And generally I was like known for being quite quick in a jump off. But of course now,
well, before you get to the jump off, I mean, what did you feel when you came through the finish and you were clear in your first round?
Yeah, I don't even think I was on earth. And then
did you realize what you had just accomplished?
Yeah, I think I realized, but I also thought, well, there's of course there's other people still to go and it's not over, and you still, now the worst part was waiting to see, will there be a jump off, are you going to win it, what's the story?
So you were the first clear, there was no jumper, you were the first to go clear.
So yeah, I literally just went and stood behind the horse boxes, just pacing up and down like, okay, come, you can do this, we got to do a jump off now. And then you're waiting and you hear the crowd and you're like, oh, they've knocked a pole. Okay, cool, that one's out. And then you're
brings
like,
out
oh,
the
no.
worst in you. Brings out the worst in you.
Yeah, the worst. And then eventually it was like, okay. Yeah. And then eventually there was like, okay, there's 3 of you in the jump off. And obviously Sean Henderson's known to be fast, and Paige Schiller, and they had done it so many times before. They were so much more experienced than I was. And I had to go first. I was like, what are the chances?
What was your strategy? I mean, what did Jono say to you, or Diane, or your mom, or?
So I think, if I can remember correctly, the main plan was 1, leave all the jumps up, and 2, put the pressure on, because to be flat out with 1 down makes it a little less pressure for the others. So I think for us it was risk it for the biscuit and make sure firstly you leave all the jumps up. So yeah, I jumped 1, 2. I took quite a while to turn to 3. And then, I mean, I still got the video somewhere, and Rogan still says she takes her time to jump the road crossing, but clears it. And then, yeah, I wasn't fast. I think they were both about 3 seconds faster than me. And also, Era didn't feel great, actually, in the jump off. I jumped 1, I got to 2, and he just made it over 2. 3, he kind of like paused over. You couldn't really see it in the video, but I was like, shock, this horse does not feel good. And then turn, and the last few jumps, he was perfect. But I'll tell you about that just now. And then Sean Henderson went, and he was way faster, but knocked 1 down. And then Paige Schiller went, and she was also way faster than me, but knocked 2 down. So, yeah, then I was the winner.
And where were you watching them from?
I don't think I was even watching. I was probably just sitting there listening for the crowd.
Yeah.
Because then you hear, the crowd's like, oh, and then you're like, okay, they've knocked. Or the crowd's dead quiet.
The crowd goes, oh, and you go, yeah.
Not really, but yes.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
I do. We all do. Come on.
Yeah. So yeah.
Brilliant.
I remember Tessa van Duren interviewed me afterwards, and she said, so tell us about your round. Were you putting on the pace, going as fast as you can? And I was like, well, not really, because I've never jumped so high before. So I couldn't go my highest and my fastest. So I just went my highest. So I was like, that's that blondness coming out again.
You were saying he didn't feel great. What was the problem over the first couple jumps? Was he just tired or stiff?
No, so I didn't realize how long this day would be. So of course you start walking the course at 1, and it's the first time I've ever been in a competition like this. And you finish and you look and it's like 5:30. I didn't know, like even think, to give my horse water, Lucerne, because I'm like, we're jumping, we're at the show. And he was actually dehydrated. So to have jumped that jump off, probably like, okay, I don't think he was dying yet, but definitely he was dehydrated. And when we got back to the stables, I got the vet out and he was like, listen, this horse is dehydrated, whatever they did. And I mean, it was hectic, because to just think what a heart he had to get through that jump off, and he knew he had to get through that jump off. And I mean, obviously I was young and those things don't...
Now's the part where you say, I learned my lesson, because the Highveld Horse Care might be watching. I now give my horses water and Lucerne at every show, and it's never happened again.
Yeah, no, it's never happened again. And I'm telling the story because this might happen to someone else.
Yeah.
Because, when you go jump at a show, like you walk the horse over and you think it's going to be quick, and then Derby is like 100 hours. So, shame.
And I mean, it was, again, I reiterate, it wasn't only your first Derby, it was your first time jumping in the 150s at that show. I just find that absolutely extraordinary. Did you realize what you had achieved, or did it all just kind of wash over you a little bit, being so young as you were? I mean, what were some of the comments? Did you...
Yeah, I think it's amazing and you love it and whatever, but like, life still carries on. And I've always tried to remember that no matter what you win or whatever, you're still you, and you're not better than anyone, or
But it must have been a goal of yours from a young girl wanting to be a show jumping rider. The Derby's one of those things you always want to win, and for you it came so quickly and so easy and effortlessly to you.
Yeah, no, it was an amazing achievement, and nothing like winning the first one ever.
Yeah.
So
but there wasn't only one, so tell us what happened after that. When was the next one? What was in between?
So after that one, sure, there was lots of little chatters about, sure, it was a fluke and first time luck and it'll never happen again. So the next year, that sort of got to me a little bit. I think I had 3 down and a foot in the water. And then the following year was 2011. So that's the year that my mom had her accident and passed away in March. So she had a horse riding accident, which is obviously quite a hectic thing for me, considering I'm a show jumper. So I think a lot of people thought I would give up and not want to ride and be scared and all of that. So that was actually the best.
Jade, if you don't mind me asking, how did you get through that? Because that must have taken a huge toll on you. I mean, your mom was a huge part of you and your riding, and and for that to have happened in that way.
So I think in the moment when you lose someone that close to you, you just sort of carry on, and I think it actually affects you later. I think the last 2-3 years for me have been where it's really affected me, and I've been doubting whether I can do this and all of that. But in the moment when you go through that, you just want to do everything for them. So you're like, okay, what can I achieve for them? So for me that year, I won 2 of the World Cups. I won the one in Polokwane, And then I won the one in PE, which was in memory of my mom.
Yeah.
And I won the overall World Cup series that year. And then that's also the year that I won the Derby for the second time. So I think...
And that was 2011. So that was a huge, huge year for you.
Yeah. So in that year, I mean, I think that just motivated me to, I don't know, it was like, I had this thing in my head that even if I touched a pole, my mom was holding it up.
Yeah.
So
did you feel that she was with you, that you were doing it for her? Was that your motivation, that whenever you went in the ring, you felt that you were doing it for your mom?
Definitely. And it almost felt like she was helping me win all these things. So yeah, I don't think it affected me in a negative way then. I think more like now when you start like running out of memories and you go to a horse show and you don't have your mom and you look at everyone else who does, you know, back then you just sort of got through it, but now you're like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah.
So yeah, then I thought, well, okay, I need to do something bigger now. I've won Derby in South Africa twice and I want to go jump the biggest one in the world.
Well, hang on. Let's not move on. Let's not be so hasty. Tell us about the second Derby. Was it a clear? Were you the only clear?
So it was a clear, and I was the only clear. Sean Neal was in second place, and he had one time fault.
Ah.
So I was
how
very
uncommon
lucky.
for Sean.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to go into jump off. He had the time fault in the first round.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you won it outright in the first round. So
yeah,
and that
was
obviously vindicated your win from the first time. Did you feel a lot of that pressure and a lot of that anxiety from people who was the naysayers? Did you feel all that weight lifted?
Yeah, well, I remember one of the coaches said to one of the clients, like I was walking past, and he said to the one girl, "Listen, go get your horse ready for the jump off because there won't be a clear round here today." And I was like, "Oh, well, I haven't jumped yet." You know what I mean? You never know. There's still so many more people. I think there were like, I don't know, 5 of us left to go. I think I was also closer to the end this time.
Yeah, you were higher qualified. Did you say that out loud, or was that something that you were just thinking?
I remember I phoned my best friend in PE and I'm like, "Can you believe it? I just walked past someone and they said this as I walked past." And she's like, "Don't worry, just go jump clear."
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Nice. And winning it for the second time as special?
Well, this time it was for my mom and it had been such a tough year. So I think as well, my other horse Twister had biliary. So for that show, so it was I only had one ride, which makes it difficult because it's when you've got 2, you can sort of get your eye in the morning before on another horse. So I remember he was only just recovering and he could jump a little bit, but he wasn't ready to go to a show. So I went and just gave him a little jump at home the morning before to try and just get my eye in for the big Derby.
And at this stage, was Jono still helping you? Was he still your Joburg guy? And how exactly did it work? Because obviously you're still living in PE, or had you moved up here? Were the horses trucking up and down, or did you have a base for them in Joburg and you were just doing the traveling like Anthony does? What was your system?
It was always very up and down. So at this stage, I wasn't training with Jono, I was training with Dominique. So every time I came up, depending on like who I was coaching with and which yard I could go to, or if there was a private place for me to go to, or who I could sort of stay with and maybe come up for 2-3 months at a time. So I think at this stage now, 2011, I was staying with, my horses were staying with Dominique. So I would fly up and down, try to stay up for like a month or whatever, or come up 2 weeks before the show. And yeah, just truck the horses up and down. It's a bit of a nightmare not being in town for the big shows and whatever. But then again, home was PE, so you just had to.
And what was back home that kept you there? Was there a business, or that you didn't just make the move to Joburg?
So we have a livery yard in PE. which has 40 stables. And back then I wasn't running it, but obviously my horses were in livery there, and it's a lot more cost effective to have them sort of at home than up in Joburg. Although the traveling and all of that's also super expensive. And I think it's just, we enjoyed coming up to Joburg, doing the shows, and then sort of going back to PE and not being in the big mix of things. Just PE is like a nice quiet place to train and practice at the PE riding club. And I didn't really want to be in the hustle and bustle of everything at that stage. I mean, I probably had a PE boyfriend or something that I didn't want to leave.
Well, it's also the year, your dad probably needed you as well. And, when you say a livery stable, we had a livery stable. Who was we?
So my mom and dad owned the yard. Yeah.
So they got really behind you once you got serious about this.
Yeah. No, I was super lucky. I mean, I had lots of support from my parents. My mom and my dad both competed, which was great because my dad was really hilarious. So his main big show was the World Cup that they had in PE every year.
He would target that, would he?
Sorry?
I say he would target that one. That was his...
Yeah. I mean, he used to do like front flick flacks in front of the clubhouse. It was very entertaining. My dad was super fast in a jump off. He would do turns that no one else could do, but almost fall off, but then just make it. So, but he would like watch the best and then try and like learn from them. He was really funny.
Lots of entertainment value.
Yeah.
And of course, that's the year you win the Derby, but then you go on to take the World Cup Series. You had 2 wins, one in Polokwane, one in PE, but you win overall on points. Was there a consideration then? Did that cement the idea to take him over? Was it off of the World Cup win and the Derby win? Why the decision to go overseas? Because some viewers might not realize, as the World Cup winner, you get to take your place in the World Cup.
So, so the World Cup win is difficult because I don't think I'd actually decided at this stage to go to Hickstead Derby. I think because I'd won the World Cup, we had that whole quarantine thing where it was like 4 months to get over. So it ended in November. Now, my mom had just really died that year. So I said to my dad, well, I want to go jump in the final in April. So he was like, well, how are you going to do that? The horse can't get there in time. So I was like, okay, well, maybe we can like lease one over there. So we went over and I tried to lease a horse there. Firstly, it was going to cost a fortune. Secondly, the horse that I was going to lease, it was like 18 years old. I went to go jump it in a show there. And I think I had like a few rails down. And I said to the guy, I don't know about this horse. Like, is it even sound? So he was like, oh, don't worry. It'll be sound on the day. And I was like, oh, I don't really do things like that. So I said to my dad, listen, let's just can this whole idea. I mean, it's a great opportunity. I would love to do it, but...
I'm tempted to ask you who the guy was, but I don't want to put anybody in a bad light.
Yeah. Let's not. So, I didn't do that. And then I think in 2012, probably near the end of 2012, I started thinking about wanting to go do Hickstead.
Okay, so another year... Because the second Derby win was 2011, was it?
Yeah.
And the World Cup win. So you have another year campaigning in South Africa. Was there much success in 2012?
I think era went, so we left in 2013, so I had another year. I think I might have won 1 or 2 Grand Prix. I mean, he always had a couple biggish wins every year, but that year I didn't win World Cups, I didn't win Derby. I've never won SA Champs actually. Children's, juniors or adults SA Champs. So that's still on my bucket list.
Yes. Well, you're so old now. I don't know if it'll ever come, Jade. I mean,
time is ticking.
You're just about 30. I mean,
4 months to go and I'm 30 and it's all over.
Yeah, sure. Of course, we're being sarcastic. So 2012 is a good year. There's some Grand Prix wins and some big wins, but in the back of your mind, you're thinking, overseas, the horse is, what, he's around 12 now?
Yeah, sure. I can't remember. Probably around that age.
Yeah.
But 2012 was also like a difficult year for me because my dad got a new girlfriend and I decided I'm going to move up to Joburg and ride here and whatever. So I moved up with my 6 horses and thinking that my dad would just carry on funding the whole thing forever, you know. And when I got here, he's like, okay, cool. Well, I'll give you 10,000 Rand a month and, you know, good luck. So I was like, well, I've got 6 horses here. She's like, well, then sell them.
Yeah.
So I stayed up in Joburg for about 4 months and then realized that it's not really going to work so well here. I got a job waitressing at my friend's brother's restaurant, which was a pizza place. So that was like, you know, paying for the groceries, which wasn't really helping much. Never mind the horses, the 6 horses I had here on 10,000 Rand a month. And at the same time, I was training
Where did you have the horses?
So a friend of mine in PE knew a guy who had bought that Stonefields estate.
Okay.
It was owned by the Baxters.
Yes.
So luckily, the guy who had bought it didn't own any horses. And I phoned him up and said, listen, can I come and stable my horses with you? So he said, cool, no problem. So I basically had the yard, I had my own groom, but the only issue was there was obviously no jumping arena or any jumps. So I could work my horses there, but I had to truck for lessons. So that was a great advantage because I obviously wasn't then in a livery yard. I just had to sort of pay for the horses' feed and shavings and shows and all of that. So 2012 was a bit of a tough year, and I think that's also what affected me in the show jumping, like competitions. Like I didn't just have the endless funding anymore. And I think when you have that endless funding and you go to a show, whether you win or not, it doesn't matter. But when you're trying to win to pay the bills, it kind of changes the whole thing of it. Yeah. So I went back to PE.
Did you sell any of those 6 in the 4 months?
I don't think so. But I think then I took them back to PE and then I think I sold a few of them.
Okay. So it was a 4-month stint here. So how was the decision after that then? It wasn't the greatest year to go overseas, to take him overseas.
So then in 2013, I came up with this great idea of taking Era overseas, and my dad and everyone thought I was mental. I mean, I didn't actually think of the whole thing. I just thought of the whole jumping at Hickstead. I didn't think of what I was going to go through. So my dad said, okay, cool. I'll pay for the horse to fly there, but I will not pay for the horse to fly back. So you either go there and you sell him there, or you go there and just stay there forever. But it's a one-way ticket, so don't get your hopes up. Yeah. So I said, okay, cool. So he had to do the whole quarantining in Mauritius, and a month in Cape Town, 3 months in Mauritius. And then I had never been to the UK in my life before.
You didn't tell your dad at this stage that the price to get there was probably about 5 times the price to get back, because you didn't need to do the whole 3 months quarantine coming back.
I know, yeah. Anyway, I mean, I got the horse back in the end. Yeah. So Ronnie Healy was actually in the UK at the time. He was married there and living there and riding there and everything. So I messaged him and said, listen, I want to come jump Hickstead. Can I come over? And he was like, okay, cool. So I flew over in October and Era was now landing in the November. And then I arrived there. I mean, Ronnie could tell you some stories. I arrived there and they showed me my room and I just started crying. I looked around. I'm like, it was pouring with rain. I was so cold. I said, where's the indoor? And they were like, there isn't an indoor. So I'm like, so how are we going to ride in the rain? He's like, no, well, that's just what we do here. There's not every yard has an indoor. So I was like, I just don't know if I can do this. First, and I was like, there's no bath. How am I going to bath? I mean, there's like this tiny shower. No, I couldn't even breathe. I cried and cried and cried. And Ronnie was at a show. So Ronnie phoned me. He's like, listen, I believe you're not very happy. So I'm like, well, no, I mean, I'm not very happy. I mean, don't you have like another place I can stay? So
what was so bad about this room? Where did they put you? In the attic?
Well, basically, it was like in the indoor stables, like it's like a barn, and the corner of the barn was this tiny little house with 3 tiny little rooms, and then a bathroom with no bath though, so you could just a shower and a toilet, and then this tiny little kitchen that we all had to share. So I did not know how I was going to get through this. And then obviously you're living with other people, and they were like 18. I think at the time I was probably 22-ish. So I was a bit older. So they had no idea about mess and a house being cleaned or anything like that. So this place was just chaos. Like packets, dishes to the roof. I didn't know what I was going to do.
And are you very fastidious when it comes to being neat?
I wouldn't say I'm OCD. I'm in the middle. I mean,
But
I can rough it out, but I also, like my bedding needs to get washed once a week.
Yes, right.
So anyway, I remember day one, I had to start cleaning stables. I mean, for about a week, they all laughed at me because I didn't know how to sweep. So my back was in agony because I bent really low down to sweep, but actually you have to like stand up and sweep. But I didn't know that. So they waited a week until I could hardly walk. My back was so sore. And then they were like, okay, we're going to teach you how to sweep. So I was like, well, thanks for teaching me now.
Was Ronnie in on this?
Yeah, they were all in on it. They thought it was the funniest thing in the world. So Era hadn't arrived yet, and I was now coming up with plans of how I would sell Era when he arrived. Because the day he arrived, I was flying back home. There was no way I was staying for this thing. Every day I was like ride the horses, I'd school the horses. Well, they were like the 1 or 2 horses I got to school, because when you are a South African coming over, you don't just get to ride all day. You get to clean stables all day, you get to groom horses all day, you get to put them on and off the walker all day, and you get to clean the tack, and you get to do all the sweeping, and then you might get to ride 1 horse.
Baptism of fire it was, eh? Doesn't matter what titles you had below the belt, you're all on a level playing field.
Yeah. So there was lots and lots of crying, and I thought, like, what have I done? Everyone was right. This was such a dumb decision. Someone even phoned.
Was it open crying in front of everybody, or was it at least like in the back of the tack room or something?
Yeah, no, it was like at night when I was showering, or if I was riding a horse and no one was there. I wasn't like crying in front of everyone.
It wasn't while you were bathing, because there wasn't a
No,
bath.
no. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, someone still phoned me the day before Era went into quarantine. And it was one of my mom's, not good friends, but one of my mom's friends. And she said to me, listen, like, you don't have a mom. I'm coming in as your mom to be your voice of reason. I think you're making a huge mistake. Like, you don't know what you're doing. You should not be going to do this whole adventure. She's like, your mom would tell you not to do it. Like, don't do it. So I was like, well, my horse is going into quarantine tomorrow. So I'm in. Sorry.
She said this to you before you left, while you were still in South Africa?
The day before the horse is going into quarantine.
Ah.
So I was like, because obviously the show before, Era went into quarantine, I was getting eliminated. I didn't realize that he actually had developed ulcers, which we figured out through quarantine. So Era was like stopping in the 130s before I was taking him over to the UK to jump Hickstead. So everyone thought I was mental.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't even know why I was getting eliminated. And obviously I was in a state because the horse is leaving for quarantine and I can't get around a 130 track in South Africa. So anyway, he arrived in the UK and he was very, very, very travel sick. He wasn't a good traveler at all. He got really, really stressed out. And obviously with the ulcers, that was a huge, huge thing. So we got him scoped and everything, and the vet said, listen, he's got severe ulcers, like bleeding, deep ulcers.
So he must have been in a state. He couldn't have been looking very good. He must have lost a lot of condition.
He looked
that's
okay.
90 days on the island while this is all going on.
Yeah. Really strange. So I've got this one horse whispering lady. I don't really believe in horse whispering stuff, but I got this one horse whispering lady to speak to Era when he was in Mauritius. And she phoned me and she said, I want to let you know that Era's sick. So I was like, okay. So I phoned the people in Mauritius and I said, listen, Era's sick. So can you get the vet there? So they're like, no, he's fine. I'm like, no, he's sick. So just get the vet there and let's just check what's going on. And I think this is when he was starting to develop the ulcers. And it was amazing how this chick told me this whole thing. But anyway, so I think we must have started with the ulcer treatment then in quarantine. So luckily I didn't leave him for 3 months. I think the stress from being in Cape Town and then the flight to Mauritius must have brought on the ulcers.
So you did hit him with the ulcer meds while he was in Mauritius.
But then I think he got travel sick from Mauritius to the UK because it's a long, long, long trip. I think it's like 30 hours. And the problem is when they leave Mauritius, the way they drive in Mauritius with those roads and stuff, he probably would have started feeling sick right from the beginning. So yeah, he arrived in the UK quite sick and that. But obviously the vets and everything are amazing there. And I remember my first vet bill was about 36,000 Rand.
After you converted to pounds and all that.
Yeah. So now my dad was helping me a little, but not unlimited funds. So I was obviously trying to work in the yard to pay my keep.
But of course you weren't making a great career from sweeping floors because you weren't too good at that. So
I wasn't actually earning any money, but I was working in the yard full time, so I couldn't really go anywhere to earn money. And then I was paying livery as well. So the whole setup was a bit like insane for me because now I needed to start earning money if I was going to be able to stay there. But yeah, so this guy called David Holden, he messaged me and he was like, listen, I don't know if you know him. He was from the UK and he had lived in South Africa for a few years. And he messaged me, he said, listen, I've just moved back to the UK. I see that you've moved over. If you need anything, let me know. So I was like, okay, cool. So
I need 36,000 Rand. I've got a vegetable.
So he came and fetched me one night and we went for dinner and I told him like about the setup and the situation or whatever. And he's like, okay, you're here to do Hickstead. Like we need to get you to the best place possible. So he said to me, like long story short, he said to me, okay, where do you want to go? So I said, no, well, why don't I go to Hickstead and just train there? If I'm going to jump the Hickstead Derby, let's go to the venue, you know? So he said, okay, cool. So somehow, by some miracle, David took me on and we were going to try and, the aim was to try and build up a business to buy and sell a few young horses until eventually I could have a few top horses to compete on and try and make a whole business out of the whole thing. So yeah,
But this guy was a rider, horseman. He had a yard.
no. So David, like he rode.
Venture capitalist.
Yeah. So David had a yard, but he wasn't a professional rider. He was just rode for fun. He was a businessman, and he just had a huge interest in show jumping and had watched me win derbies in South Africa. And I think he sort of just took me under his wing and thought, let's help this girl. Thank goodness, because without him, I don't actually know how I would have got to the Hickstead derby. So my dad helped a little bit, but my dad was like, there's only so much I can do and you have to figure it out for yourself. So I moved to Hickstead and
So you moved out of the little 3-bedroom apartment with the teenagers and the filth?
Yeah.
How long did you have to endure that before Mr. Holden came along?
So I think I moved there in October and then I moved to Hickstead in about February.
Oh, so a good few months.
Yeah. Well, because also what happened was Ronnie actually ended up moving back to South Africa that January.
Yeah.
So I was then sort of stuck there without Ronnie and I was like, okay, I need to get out of here now. So off I went to Hickstead. And then, yeah, so then we were training for the Hickstead Derby and Shane was my coach, Shane Breen, who's an Irish rider.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really going so well. I think it was then. I took Era to a show and a 1:30 show in the April. And I knocked down 6 poles.
Sure.
So I phoned my dad in an absolute state and he was like, I told you you shouldn't be doing this. And I was like,
thanks, Dad.
Hello, okay, you're not helping. You know, I'm also feeling like this is a mistake now. All this money for nothing. I can't even jump 1 meter 30.
Was that your first show that you went to?
It was the first sort of biggest show. Yeah. And the rest are sort of small shows, like local shows down the road. And then I decided I'm going to go to Hamburg Derby, which was.
Well, could you put your finger on it? Did you know why you had such a bad show? Or, I mean, he was over his ulcers.
I think he started doing some strange things. So he would have days when he was himself, but he would have days where he wasn't himself. I don't know if he was like trying to acclimatize but since the move to the UK, he was very hot and cold. There were some days where he was good. There were some days where he was just really bad. And I think the ulcers really started affecting him. Yeah. And it was difficult because I couldn't push him when he wasn't feeling well. And with all the traveling and venues he had never been to, I think he was just also super confused. I mean, he spent like a lot of time in South Africa going to the same places, which I think he got used to.
Is he quite a sensitive horse?
Yeah, he got very stressed out. I think, yeah. So then we went to Hamburg Derby, and the first day he jumped beautifully. I jumped to number 6, and then Shane.
At what level? Because you'd had that 1:30 outing, which wasn't a success, and then you step it up to Hamburg.
So this was now the big Hamburg.
Yeah, so where was your confidence? I mean, you couldn't have had much confidence going to Hamburg after a disastrous 1:30 with 6 down.
No, so that was April. This was now May. Obviously, we went home, we did some training. Yeah. But still, I mean, the horse was not near.
In the back of your mind, you're going, oh.
Yeah. So Hamburg, I jumped the first day, jumped to number 6, and then I retired because my coach said to me, listen, don't waste him. If he feels good after 6, just come out and then we'll save him for the next day. So I was like, okay, cool. So jumped till number 6, he felt unbelievable. Jumps were massive. He had no issues. Next day, I got eliminated at number 6.
Because you had trained him the previous day only to go to number 6.
Yeah.
So you thought the next day, well, that's it.
Yeah. So now, of course, I was in a bit of a panic. I had to do a really, really big, it's almost, I think it was like the Derby trial or something. So where they put a lot of the big Derby jumps in. Yeah. So I got to the finish that day, but I had a couple down. So then I decided, listen, I'm not going to do Hamburg Derby. And the one thing which personally I didn't think I would be able to do, at Hamburg, they've got this double of verticals
it's one
with
pole.
no ground line.
Yeah. And
even in lessons, if anyone ever built a vertical with no ground line, I'd be like, Ira can't do that. Can you put the ground line in? So to be honest, I was terrified of those double of verticals.
Yeah.
And I wasn't feeling very confident. So I decided to put him in the speed derby.
But when you say, I mean, for people who don't know, when you say it's a double of verticals with no ground line, it's not only no ground line, isn't it just one rail on an upright and another rail? It's got nothing. It's completely
It's got nothing.
Yeah, there's no ground line, there's no pillars, there's nothing. It's one pole and it's high and it's a double of those two poles. I mean, most horses might be tempted to duck under there.
Totally. I mean, I just had visions of going straight under. I mean, with my horse or without, either way, it would be embarrassing.
Yeah.
So I put him in the speed derby, which is about 1.40 meters, although not all the jumps were 1.40 meters. And that was probably one of the most fun things I've done in my life. I would have won by far, but I knocked one pole. So I think I ended fourth.
But he was back. He felt good.
Yeah, that was absolutely flat out. I think I won a very decent amount of money. I can't remember what it was, but the Hamburg Speed Derby is a massive thing. The crowd is packed, and they play like really, really loud music, and everyone claps as you go. It's the funnest thing, the most fun thing I've ever done.
And when you say a crowd, it's not like 4,000 or 5,000 people. We might get a derby here. You could probably add another zero on. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of people who go to the Hamburg Derby.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that must have given you a lot of confidence.
Yeah. Well, not really, because I went to the after party and we were sitting with a few of the South Africans. I think it was like Henning and I don't know who else, and Hilmar was there. And he said to me, so, what are you going to do now? And so I said, no, I'm going back to the UK. I'm going to start training for the Hickstead Derby. So he said, oh, you're doing Hickstead Derby? So I said, yeah, that's why I moved here to do the Hickstead Derby. He said, well, what horse are you going to do that on? So I said, well, a new era. So he was like, this black one that you got at the show here. So I was like, yes. So he said, mark my words, you will never see the finish at Hickstead on that horse. So I was like, what? He's like, that horse, wow. He thought it was the funniest thing. He's like, you will never cross the finish line of the Hickstead Derby on that horse. So I was like, great, okay. Anyway, sure. I went home.
That was Hilmo said that.
Yeah. I wonder if he remembers.
Yeah. Wow. Well, when you crossed the finish, I'm sure he did.
Yeah. So I went back to the UK and we were training, and a week before the big Hickstead Derby, my coach Shane put up this line. It was like 3 verticals with no ground line, but it was 1.20 meters and they were like 2 strides apart. And I jumped in, and Ira doesn't stop often. I jumped in and he just ducked out, and I think I fell off. Yeah, I fell off. So Shane was like, oh, sorry, I didn't measure that distance properly. Because these Irish people, they can be a little bit crazy. He's like, I didn't measure that distance properly. Let me just fix it. So he fixed it. And I came again, and Ira wouldn't go near the thing. He kept on just running, napping the other way. So he was like, well, you better smack him. So I'm like, oh no, I can't smack Ira. So he was like, Jade, you've got to jump around the Hickstead Derby next week. You can't even jump over a 120 vertical. You have to give him a smack. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll smack him. So I smacked him, like 3 times, and he reared up, and he fell over backwards, and I fell off. So Shane was like, "Oh, you are pathetic," and he just grabbed Era, and he got on. He's like, "You pathetic, you're never going to get round this derby." Anyway, so he spent about half an hour. Now I'm crying. I can hardly breathe. I mean, I've got Hickstead next week. I can't jump 1.20 m vertical. So I'm freaking out. Shane gets on this horse. He schools it around for like 20 minutes. He's got him on the bridle, cantering between the hand and leg. Like, I've never seen Era look this good in my life. And he turns the corner and he beautifully canters down the 3 verticals. No problem. So he gives it back to me and he's like, "Okay,
that's how you do it, Jade. That's how you do it, Jade."
Yeah. So I must say, if it wasn't for that day, like Era was sort of allowed to do whatever he wanted to, and if he didn't really feel like it, I'd be like, "Okay, it's fine." And I think he also needed to know that when we're going to jump, we've got to jump.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't for that day and what we went through, I don't think I would have got to the finish.
Yeah, you might not have got to the start. So do you think that helped? I mean, when you got on him after that, did he feel different? Did he need a little bit of listen? There is a line.
I've never like taken him on, and I've always let him do whatever he wants. And I think to get through what we got through on Hickstead, he needed to know that no matter what was going to happen on that day, he was going over that jump.
What were Shane's feelings? I mean, going into Hickstead and coaching you, was he positive about it, or?
Yeah, he was pretty positive. I think in the back of his head, he probably thought I was mental. I mean, judging by the training and whatever, because after the derby, he couldn't get over the fact that it had gone as well as it did. But I think one thing which was nice for Era and I was we knew when a big day was a big day, and we both have to be on form though.
Well, take us to that big day, because you've won 2 derbies here. Walking around the Hickstead derby, is it bigger? I mean, it's a longer track. The jumps it's a massive arena. The jumps are really spread out. It gives you the chance to really gallop along, which would have suited you. But when you walked around, did you think you were up to it? Or did you have Hilmar in the back of your mind?
I was quite positive that year, because obviously I had like risked a lot to be there. It had cost a fortune. And I had a lot to prove. Like my family had flown over. It was another level, and this is like a dream. And obviously I was doing it for my mom and all of that. So I started walking the course, and I walked 1, 2, 3. I walked to number 4, and it was like up here. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's number 4." So Hickstead Derby compared to South African Derby there's a big difference. Hickstead, I don't know what it is about that arena, but like there's a very undercover gradient. So like when you turn to jump the water jump, you're actually cantering uphill, which makes it quite tricky to know the different levels of the arena. And obviously having lived there and having been coached by Shane, he knew all of this, but to then learn how to ride that was one of the biggest challenges. And then the other big challenge is their Devil's Dyke, which is on a curve, like a left curve. And the biggest issue I have with Era is bending him to the left. He's very, very stiff to the left. So just my luck.
You had the end of that dike, didn't you?
Sorry?
You had the A element, the end.
Yeah. Coming in, just getting Era against a fence is difficult, never mind bending him around the left at the same time, and then having 3 verticals, 1 stride in between. So like lots of his weaknesses coming out there. The bank is huge, absolutely huge, and what makes it really tricky is they've got this random little jump at the top. So you've got to jump a little jump just before you drop down like 100 meters, and then jump this 1.60 m vertical at the bottom. So it definitely adds a bit of a bit of another technical level, having that little thing at the top.
And what was Shane's advice walking around there? Did you walk it with him or did you walk on your own?
I walked it with him. Actually, I think I arrived to walk the course, and I was like, "Hey, where are you? It's the big day." And he's like,
"I'm in the pub."
Yeah, he was like, "No, I don't need to walk the course." I'm like, no, but I need you to walk the course with me. Because he's like, "Yeah, well, it's the same every year." I'm like, "No." I mean, this is a big thing for me,
Oh, the Irish. Oh, the Irish.
Yeah. So I don't even think Shane really walks the course. He just hops on and goes now. It's like so easy for him.
But take us around that track, because you had a wonderful ride. I know you had the end down, but you landed up on of the dike. You landed up on 8 though. Is that right?
So I knocked number 2, which is one of the easiest jumps in the whole course.
Oh.
But what makes it tricky is it's quite near the beginning. So you jump 1, and then you basically got to ride number 2 like it's number 18. Because it's a small oxer, but again, there's this slant uphill to it.
Yeah.
And if they're not cantering quite forward up the hill in front of your leg, they all just knock it down.
So do you think you underrode that a little bit?
Yeah, I just came around the corner like, number 2. Doosh.
Did that wake you up a little bit, maybe?
Sorry?
Did that wake you up a little bit, maybe, that you knew you had to really get on your bicycle and go for it?
I think so. And I also remember, like, as I was going over, I'm like, no, the easiest jump in the course. But then that kind of took the pressure off.
Yeah.
Because I was like, you've had one. Like, just enjoy this, do your best. There's no pressure. And I mean, to have such an early fault and then to still end on 8 was quite a miracle.
Well, I mean, the only other fault that you did have was the in of the dike, and for exactly the same. Looks like he just hung off the fence a little bit and you couldn't quite get him straight. And then just had that A element. Otherwise, a brilliant round. But up until that time, you were the lowest penalties. 8 was the best score up until then.
So I think basically until the last 5 to go, I was the best score, and I think there were about 36 of us in the whole class. So I was now starting to get nervous about having to do a jump off and all of that. And it's such a pity that I had the number 2, because 2 other riders went and had 4 each. Yeah. So it would have been so awesome to have been in that jump off.
So you landed up on 8, and that put you into 3rd.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was incredible. What were some of the comments, your supporters? What did Shane say afterwards? What did Hilmar say afterwards? Maybe Hilmar's going to watch this. You're going to get a phone call from him in the week.
Say anything. And Shane and everyone, I think they were super happy and also maybe a little bit shocked, because it was a massive dream for this little girl from South Africa on this Namibian bred 300,000 Rand horse.
Yeah. No, I mean, I remember it well, and we were all cheering. Sure, it was a great thrill to watch you. Yeah. Was it always a dream to ride the Hickstead Derby, and why the Hickstead Derby? What was the big lure of the Hickstead Derby for you?
It wasn't always a dream. I don't even think I ever knew about it before, probably 3 months before I decided I want to go. I just was like, I want to do something big. What's something bigger than the South African Derby? And then I'd chatted to a few people, and they're like, well, the Hickstead Derby is one of the biggest derbies in the world. What about that one? And I was like, yes, that one. I want to do that one. So, I mean, that's basically how the Hickstead Derby came along.
Okay.
So can you imagine your daughter Dad, I want to do Hickstead, and Dad's like, oh my gosh, please. And I was like, no, but I'm serious. I want to do Hickstead. So
your dad said that he would pay for you to get there but not come back. But was it the plan to go on to the World Games after Hickstead, or was it the success at Hickstead that motivated you to go on to the World Games?
Yeah, so it wasn't the plan. The plan was to just go to Hickstead, and then, I mean, I don't really know what the plan after that was. I think in my head I thought, well, I would either make something work there or just come home, I didn't really realize but what I'd gotten myself into. And now I was there, and I had the sponsor, David, and we were going to start this business of buying a few young horses and producing them and selling them. And then I was like, okay, well, let me try to give the World Games thing a go. But in the same breath, I was like, here isn't really a World Games horse. So I looked at a few options to try, maybe lease a horse or maybe see if there was a horse in the yard, because it's quite a big thing to get a horse into the World Games. So I thought if I could find
just going back on what you said when you say he wasn't really a World Games horse, what do you mean by that? The size of the tracks was too much for him, the technicality, or you felt that he was at a stage in his career that it was maybe a bit too much?
So it's just kind of the known thing that a Derby horse and a World Games horse are completely different. So I would say maybe that he wasn't really like careful enough. He was probably a little too brave, and I also think he didn't actually have the scope for that level. Although Hickstead's so massive, but I think naturally.
But Derby jumping, you can get a good run at the fences, whereas show jumping in its purest form is technical riding, coming off the turn, and there's suddenly a 2 strides away, a massive oxter that you need the scope and you need that huge amount of rideability.
Yeah. So I was there and I thought, well, let's just give it a go. So I had to qualify. I had to jump. Someone had to set up a course, so you had to pay someone, or you had to go to one of the qualifying shows, which was very difficult because I struggled a lot to get a visa to go compete in Europe. So I couldn't get to any of those qualifying shows, and then even if I couldn't get in because they were full. So my only option was to pay this course builder. At the end of the one show in the UK, they would put up a course with all the regulations that you had to, all the rules that you had to abide by for a qualifying round, and then you had to jump this round under 8 faults to qualify. That's all you had to do. So I jumped the course and I knocked 2 poles. So I got in by the skin of my teeth.
Yeah. Sure.
So yeah, then off I went to the World Games.
What show did that happen at?
It was a place called Shepstow, which I think was like a 2-star international show.
So did you have to go and compete at the show and then jump this extra class, or you just went there to jump this?
No, I went to compete at the show, but they needed, like their championships class didn't have all the regulations that they needed, so they had to build a different course for me at the end of the show.
And were you the only one, or were there others that had to do this as well?
I think I was the only one. I mean, it does sort of get open to someone else, because then at least you can split the costs.
Yeah.
I think it wasn't that hectic. I mean, well, because now at this stage I had a bit of a sponsor, so I think it was €1,000 you had to pay to do this,
sure.
Which is like 20,000 rand.
Sure.
Yeah. So I just got into that by the skin of my teeth, and then went and jumped the World Games, which obviously was unbelievable. The first day, I think I had like 3 back rails down. And
how long before we get to World Games was the gap between Hickstead and World Games?
So
and it was in Normandy, was it?
Yeah, Hickstead was in June, and I think the World Games was in August.
Okay.
So it was quite close.
Yeah.
So World Games was hectic. The first day I was very happy. I had 16 faults. The next day I had a lot more than 16 faults. My horse, shame. He just jumped this much lower than every single pole.
Shame. Yeah.
But he really tried his heart out, and for me, like, to get to the finish, I was very happy.
And walking that track, when you arrived at the World Games and you walked that first qualifier with your teammates as well, what was the experience like, and what were your thoughts going into that? Because that would have been now a step up from what you had seen before.
Sure. I remember after jumping on the second day, I went, I put Era back, whatever, came and sat in the grandstands to watch in the afternoon. And I was like, yo, have they put the course up? And my dad was like, no. So I'm like, no, they definitely put the course up because there's no ways that I jumped that. And he was like, no, they don't put the course up. It's the same for everyone. And I was like, I couldn't believe that I jumped over those jumps. Okay, I didn't clear them all, but I still went over.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was.
And the experience of being part of the South African team and wearing the green jacket and being capped for your country, and amongst other South Africans after all those lonely months on your own, that you had some South African gees around you.
Yeah, it was unbelievable, and I'd love to do it again. And I really think it would just be so great if we could really have a solid, amazing team. You know, we're always struggling for numbers, and it's so difficult for us to get over there and do it. But it would be so great to do it again one day, and also maybe have a horse that was a little bit more World Games scope.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not going to lie, I was terrified, and I did feel a little bit out of my depth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's be honest, and this is no disrespect. You probably were a little bit out of your depth, and I say that because to get to that level, and all of those top riders will tell you, you can't just step up there. That's lots of those 5-star shows, building up. Ask Lisa as well, getting the experience, getting the horses mileage going there as well, where you pretty much came in cold. You jumped the Hickstead Derby. You came in from having bad shows at 1:30, jumped the Hickstead Derby, had a great round, but then coming back to that technical show jumping of World Games. I mean, I think you'd be the first to say you probably were a little bit out of your depth.
Yeah. I mean, when you're there and you're doing all of that, to have 2-3 horses going to the big 5-star shows and then maybe heading to World Games is probably a better option. But we all know how that is, and the cost and all of that. So I suppose you do what you can with what you've got, and it's experience. I wouldn't take it back, even with the result.
Yeah. Now, your dad was there. Was that the time you spoke to him to reconsider his one-way deal, that the horse was going to stay and actually you'd like to bring the horse back?
So then I carried on staying there for a little while, and I thought, okay, we're going to run this business and buy and sell some young horses. And then it didn't really work out. I had Era, who was quite old. We decided to then bring one of my other horses in South Africa over, but he always struggled with soundness issues. So we got him over thinking we could then get him into the 140s, 150s and sell him. But then we couldn't get him sound. As soon as he got to 120, he would go lame. So that was our second dealing prospect. And then the third one was one of the horses that David already owned. But she was also quite tricky, and because he had her for quite a while, we needed to sell her for quite a bit to actually make anything. And now you're sitting with 3 horses costing a fortune, and you need to sell one, but you can't because none of them can be sold right now. So eventually we realized that this business was not going to work. So we decided to call that quits. And then I decided to move from Shane's yard and go and train with Tim Stockdale. It was a smaller yard, and it was just a change of scenery. So I went up to Tim Stockdale, and also I think Tim Stockdale's main rider was venturing on somewhere else, so it was also quite a great opportunity for me there. So then I said to my dad, well, listen, I've got Quinto, who was the one that we couldn't really keep sound, and I've got Era. I can't take both of these horses with to Tim unless we're willing to pay a full livery for the second one. So if you're looking at that, it's going to be cheaper to send Era home.
Which is what you did.
Options, you know?
Yeah.
So then I thought, well, let's send Era home. He's a little bit old now. I think he was 18 or so. I can't remember. And then keep Quinto there and try and get him sound and maybe sell him. and then start back at the bottom, get a young horse, produce it, sell it, until eventually one day, A, by some luck, you end up with a great owner that has 5 Grand Prix horses you can go jump, not likely, or B, you just buy one, sell one, until eventually you end up with another era, and hopefully you get noticed, and, you know, pick up a few rides along the way. So I was going now into another winter. So I went to Tim Stockdale, probably it was in September 2015, so a year later. And then once era left, I think I was over it. I went to Tim, I worked there, but it was just like 2 hours in the morning cleaning stables, and then you rode some horses for 2 hours, and then you had to feed them, and then you had to groom them, and then you had to clean the tack. And then like it would be 12 o'clock in the night, and Tim would arrive back from a show, and we had to like get out of our beds and go and unload the horses, clean the tack, and then be ready for work at 7 in the morning. And I was like, no ways, I just can't carry on doing this any longer. I mean, especially because now I wasn't going to any big shows either. Now I would get the odd little baby to take to a show down the road. So now I was like not doing what I really wanted to do. Couldn't see any very soon potential of me jumping in a big class. And then like some would have a 130 horse that he didn't really liked that had jumped the Hickstead Derby. And then he said to me, Kay, you take it to the next show. And I was like, Kay, see, this is it. This is your moment. And then he would give me this horse, and I remember I went to an indoor show and I jumped a clear, and this horse hadn't jumped a clear in months. And he's like, yo, this horse goes well for you. So I was like, yes, I'm probably going to get this horse and I can jump it in the Hickstead Derby next year. And then the next show, Tim took it back. And I was like, there's just no way anything's going to work for me.
Yeah.
So
ups and downs of a dealing yard, hey?
Yeah. And then also like any top horses Tim would get, or his son started becoming quite good, so he'd get, and I just missed home, and I hadn't like found my feet there, and I was just done. So I came home.
Well, I suppose it's different. If you're a youngster and you're 17 years old and you're looking for a break, that would be a great place to start and to get stuck in. But your situation, having jumped derbies, been there, gone to the World Games, and then going back, it's almost like a bit of snakes and ladders, where you just feel like you've come down the snake a little bit more, and that motivation to do it wanes, I guess. You do get older and want different things.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I would be in the yard, and then people would be like, you've jumped at World Games. What are you doing here? And I'm like, well, where else must I go? You know what I mean? You don't have the endless money to just go and buy tons of horses and start up your own yard, and you've got to just try and find your little slice somewhere. So it's tough.
It is. So you decided to come home.
Yeah.
And what's been happening since? Because are you still, now that you're home, you met Greg, you got married, are you still as hungry as you were? Because I mean, the tail end of the story for Era and yours, you did jump him a little bit more. There was some. I think you jumped in a few big classes, but you were kind of winding down his career.
Yeah.
And it just takes me back to what you said, that once he went, the motivation and the passion wasn't there. So have you found it again? Are you back, or where are you at now in your career?
So my plan was to move home and then into PE, and then I had the yard there where I would buy and sell young horses, coach, run the livery yard, and then compete. Because now, of course, like I've come back, and my dad said, "Kay, if you want to make this work, you got to fund it yourself." So now I'm like, okay, fine, let's do this. So
I mean, saying that, this is not the first time in the story I'm hearing your dad say that, and you seem to have him wrapped around your pinky, where he does relent and go, okay, all right.
Yeah, every now and then, but the older I'm getting, the harder it's getting.
Well, you've got a husband now, do it yourself.
Yeah, well, that's what my dad says. So I decided, I'd come back to South Africa and do the whole horsey thing as a career. And then I met Greg, and I've now moved to Joburg, and that whole thing has completely changed. So I've decided I'm not going to do the horsey thing as a career anymore. Obviously, like, I've thought about the whole thing, and I am still going to ride, obviously, but what I enjoy the most is competing in the big classes. I don't really love producing horses right from the bottom. I mean, I have been doing that, so I've got a few that I had bought to sell, which I'm going to sell, and then at the moment I'm just going to keep one horse in the big classes for now, which is the new one, Freedom. So at the Derby 2 years ago, my dad said, okay, if you retire Freedom, if you retire Era now, I'll buy you a new horse. So I'm like, now? So he's like, yeah, now. So I was like, yo, I don't want to retire him now. He's like, I know, Jade, but you have to retire him now. Like, he can't keep going. So I'm like, no, he can. So that was the deal for Freedom. Okay. So that was my dad's, as he says, last ever horse he's buying.
And Freedom, tell me a little bit about him.
So he is imported. He is 10 years old. He's jumped in the 130s, mainly overseas. He got ridden by a little 13-year-old girl. I think he did maybe 140 class. So yeah, I'm hoping, because that's my dream now, is obviously I think I've lost quite a lot of hunger and motivation and whatever, not having Era, because we were like the team. And then I've just had all these young horses, and I'm like, well, this is going to take forever to get back in the big classes. And then luckily my dad was like, gave me the little step up by getting Freedom. So that's helped me again with some motivation, but it's difficult also not to compare Freedom to Era the whole time, because now he's got big shoes to fill.
No, but you can't do that.
I know, but it's hard. I'm like, Freedom, you've got to do, Era did that, you must do that.
He's Era. Yeah.
Yeah, he's Era, we don't know him.
Yeah. So you say the motivation or the passion, the real hunger. I mean, you're still motivated, but life changes you now. Like you say, you've started another business, you are married, you've got these other sports, you enjoy your cycling, you still enjoy are you still doing the triathlons as well?
I'm not doing the triathlons because I had a bit of an accident like 10 years ago where a horse crushed my foot. So I can't run at all. I've had lots and lots and 4 operations. And it's still not right. So that's also where the teaching and the producing young horses and whatever wouldn't have been able to work for me, because I can ride 3 or 4 horses, but to ride 10 to 12 a day, it's not possible. Yeah. So that's why I had to look into doing something that wasn't so hard on my body, which is the Just Lose It business, and then still manage to keep the riding. So yeah, my whole life has changed a lot, and I think through that process I went through a little bit of a downer, and obviously not having Era and not only having young horses, and then getting Freedom, and I'm starting to find my feet now and starting to find what I really enjoy. And I know it probably sounds bratish, but I really do enjoy jumping the bigger classes. Instead of taking the young horses to the 90 centimeters and the meters. I also want to enjoy my life, and my husband doesn't ride, so he likes to travel, so I can't be at a show every weekend. Yeah. So I think
that's life. I mean, that's your priorities change, life changes, but I mean, you've had a wonderful, by no means I'm saying it's over, but you've achieved so much already. Anything left on your bucket list? You were saying you'd love to win an SA Champs, but how hungry are you to go hunting that down?
So I think my next goal now is to get Freedom into the big classes. It would be great if I could find 1 or 2 rides so that I didn't only have him going. And yeah, to win an SA Champs, I definitely want to win a Derby again, because I've won it on Era, but now I want to win it on another horse. Yeah. but it's difficult to stay patient and to, you know, freedoms also can't just go jump a World Cup tomorrow. So to go through all that again and just be patient and keep the motivation that you'll get there again. And I think it came so quickly for me on Era that I've never had to go through this before.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Now the work really starts.
Now, this is the tough part.
Yeah. Any aspirant show jumpers, you've been there, you've achieved so much already, and you've done the overseas, you've done the hard yards overseas, and from what I'm hearing from your stories, there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows. What are your words of advice for any young aspirant show jumper who, again, doesn't have a huge financial backing to be able to just have it handed to them on a plate, that needs to kind of keep their head down, but has got the talent? What can you say to them?
Sure, that's a tough one. I would make sure that you could build something for yourself so that you didn't have to rely on anyone else. So in other words, I would leave school, study or whatever, build a business so that when you are 30 or 35, you can buy your own 4 or 5 top Grand Prix horses and compete and have the best time ever. Or go overseas when you're 18 and hope that you get a foot in the right door, you get at the right yard, you work your butt off for a long time, and then hopefully pick up some great rides. Yeah. But for me, my aim now is to be able to go buy my own horses and to build a business to be able to then fund that.
Yeah. Jade, it's been wonderful chatting. You said it before we started this off air that how are you going to keep chatting for an hour? It's been almost 2 hours, an hour 45.
Oh my word.
So.
I can't believe you managed to get me to speak for so long.
I didn't have to try that hard. It's been a wonderful time chatting to you. I loved your story and the way that you are so candid. So all the very best to you. Hopefully we see you on the other side of the fence after this lockdown is all over.
Awesome. Thank you.
And say hi to Greg for me.
I will. Bye.
Take care. Bye.